Hello and welcome back to the crypto simulation. You're inside the simulation with me and you're here hopefully to get rich. So, nothing that I tell you is ever or should ever be considered financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor and you have a brain to do your own research. So, please don't take anything I say in here as gospel truth. Go out and investigate it for yourself first and then form your own conclusions and base your investing decisions on those conclusions that you form. That being said, I'm here today to talk about Bitcoin. And I'm going to focus on Bitcoin on shorter time frames, mainly looking at the 3-day. That seems to be the key time frame to be investigating. And we're going to answer the question, where do we go from here? I mean, everything feels really bullish right now. And yeah, in fact, just looking at the charts, I'm noticing something kind of similar. Tell me if you notice this too. But look at this formation from our last bull market right here. Doesn't this almost look like a mini formation, kind of similar to that? Like, doesn't it kind of look that way? I don't know. I'm seeing something here. Right as I'm like doing this video, you got to be careful with these patterns because nothing ever plays out exactly the same way as it has in the past. But that's just something interesting to notice. Anyways, let's get into our analysis. Now, this wouldn't be a crypto simulation video if I didn't open it up with a logarithmic regression channel. You can always count on that. So I have a logarithmic regression channel that starts in June of 2022, so a little over a year and a half ago, and basically includes this first dump, a bunch of straddling of the median line, and another dump that occurred in September and October. We've spoken about that dump before. Now, I have to be honest with you. What happened with Bitcoin recently with this push up to where we're at now, which is about 47K, was most certainly not my base case. I think I said in a video that I thought maybe it would tag this +1 standard deviation line. These are, by the way, I have to always tell you, these are in increments of 1 plus or minus standard deviation on a 3-day chart of Bitcoin. I thought it would maybe tag this line here, but it didn't. We came down nicely and held support at the logarithmic regression median line, which we tagged that a whole bunch in late 2022, tagged it again in January, February of 23, and tagged it again in May, tagged it in June, tagged it in July, tagged it in October, and we really haven't been down there since. We got really close on this wick, which literally went almost right down to the channel, but then we just kind of blasted off again. So yeah, Bitcoin's looking bullish, and we actually, printed one of the most bullish formations you can possibly have in charting, which is an inverse head and shoulders. Okay, now this isn't like a giant inverse head and shoulders, so don't expect us to go like rocket off to 70,000 or anything crazy like that. But it is a bullish structure to be respected. Now, my intuition is telling me we're still going down, but what I would be looking for now is this standard deviation line up here that's at around $52,000. Now this is just me talking off the top of my head. I honestly haven't thought a lot about Bitcoin until I started recording this video, so you're going to kind of go through my thought process with me as I analyze the charts. But I can't tell from a logarithmic regression chart where things are going. I can just see we did have resistance several times in the past at this +2 line. Right here we did back in July of 2022. Granted, we were in a bear market, and it looks like we tried to tag that in early January. Things didn't work out. One thing I am suspicious of here is a double top. We're getting pretty close to forming that double top, and double tops, should they occur, are bearish. So we do have to keep that in mind as a possibility, and that's just me analyzing the structural TA. I haven't gotten underneath the hood, really looked at anything else. I haven't pulled up the Gaussian channel, haven't looked at Bollinger Bands. So we are going to do all that though, okay? We are going to do that. And we're going to also try to understand why Bitcoin is rallying as well. And yeah, so let's pull up a Gaussian channel, stare at that for a little bit, maybe pull up some moving averages, and really get under the hood of Bitcoin and see what it might be telling us on this 3-day time frame. Okay, so I've just pulled up a couple things here. We got the green Gaussian channel, which is very narrow, and it looks like it's actually inflecting a little bit here. Now this is on a 3-day, so 3 days are a little more volatile, than say 5 day or weeks or 2 weeks. So Gaussian channel is not as valuable of an indicator on shorter time frames. Now this is a new indicator that I just started using. If you watch my previous Bitcoin video, these are logarithmic Bollinger Bands, and you can see right now that we're actually above the mean line. We had a little fake out to the downside, which became our inverse head and shoulders, and things are looking bullish. I'm thinking this bullishness is going to continue, probably for a little while into February, and I'd probably be looking for some resistance up here. It would be nice to pull up some Fibonacci's, fibs, and kind of like maybe see where we're at with that too. So let's go ahead and do that. What an interesting chart. So look at what we've done recently. We tested the 786 fib, well, almost. Couldn't quite make it there. And then we actually held the 618 as support. That was something that I didn't really expect to happen, to be honest with you. And then I thought we'd kind of, chill out here, put in a lower high, maybe around 45K. That was my base case. But this move up to 47 totally threw me off guard. Then I look back and I see this inverse head and shoulders, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, that's bullish. But I didn't see it, no way to see it here because it didn't exist. And it's kind of hard to tell that you had one almost until you were already crawling up the ladder. So looks like we have a date with the 786 fib again. Maybe we'll actually make it there this time. And, could we break through this resistance and head up to the 886, which is at 58K? I mean, that's possible. I haven't looked at enough indicators to tell you what I, think about that happening, but it is certainly possible. That's something we're going to have to watch for. Now, something I just noticed is that we've actually acquired some significant volume support at around 42 to 43K. That wasn't there before, but all this chopping that we did has now resulted in some more significant volume support being built out at this level. So getting under 40K is going to be a bit of a battle. There's nothing but air, kind of like, the further down you go once you're under 35, but we have quite a bit of support that has formed in this region up here around the 618 fib, and we just held the 618 fib as support. Now, might we come back and test this again? We might. I think at some point we need to test the 0.5 fib. Now, truthfully, that might not happen until the next bear market, for all we know. We just blasted right through in the 618 fib after chopping around for nearly a year, over no man's land. So this is a really interesting chart, and I think we're going to have to, there really isn't an easy answer just staring at fibs or staring at the VRVP. We know that if we can get above the 786, there's nothing but air up here. But there is some resistance. There are going to be some people waiting to sell who didn't get a chance to sell that are sitting right around 50K. I imagine 50K is going to be a psychological level to get past. So my personal feeling is that we don't break through 50K. That's what I'm going to say now. My answer may change by the end of this video, and I will give a conclusive thought because nobody wants someone to say, I think, I don't know what's going to happen, right? Because then why are you listening to me? I will give you my educated guess as to what's going to happen. Overall, though, this formation we've made is just super bullish. So even if we did come back down, I can't imagine it lasting for very long. But that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is we're going straight up. Here's a potential clue that I might be right about this having a double top. Look at this Gaussian ribbon. This Gaussian ribbon is green but narrowing. So if we see this continue to close, I would expect the bullishness to run into a little bit of resistance here. But what we could also have happen is this could just open right back up as well. I have to be very careful not to let my confirmation bias come into play. So, but looking at past Gaussian ribbons, you can see that sometimes when you get that narrowing, you do finally get a drop, right? So let's look at, but look, other situations, when you're in a mania phase, you might get narrowing and then it just opens right back up again. I certainly hope we're not in a mania phase right now, because that would end the cycle a lot earlier than I ever anticipated we would end. I had a feeling that my base case is we are in a left translated cycle, for sure. That's how I feel. But generally speaking, when the green closes, you can see it's usually followed by some red. And this is on the 3 day, so everybody's getting really excited right now, and I'm excited for them. And we could, I mean, if this doesn't turn red and it opens back up, that's going to make me start thinking that the end of this cycle might be sooner than we think, even sooner than I think. I was kind of going for end of year 2024, quarter one 2025, thinking we make it to an election year. Now, please don't take this as FUD. I'm just looking at a Gaussian ribbon, but as I'm scrolling back, you can see there aren't very many times in Bitcoin's history, other than mania runs, where we see the green Gaussian ribbon turn green again after it's narrowed. You see this in mania, but you don't see it too often in non-mania. So I want it to turn red. I would like to have a bull run that lasts a little longer than this one has lasted. Okay, so I think we should look at some other indicators, but this is telling me that this uptrend probably doesn't have too much more legs to it. We're probably facing a double top. That's what I'm reading here. And that double top would be somewhere around our previous top, maybe a little bit higher. I don't know. We could do something like what we did in 2021, where we have the first top and then a little bit of a lull and then a second top, and then we dump down to well, I don't know, wherever we dump down, maybe around 35K or so. I think that's still very much in play. I think there'll be some resistance for sure in the 40 to 42 range, but we haven't had a really sizable correction in quite some time, and that is not healthy from a long-term bull market structure point of view. Now, that doesn't mean it has to happen. That doesn't mean it will happen. This is just what I'm seeing based on this narrowing Gaussian ribbon. Of course, we could have something rather unremarkable, like a very thin red followed by another green, but markets move in waves, and I feel like, remember, we're nearly at the +2 log line, so we probably do need to take a trip back down to the mean. Now on the 3 day, very interestingly, my Coin Bureau OBOS printed a sell signal on December 3rd, and these sell signals do not trigger easily, and that's what made me sort of pivot back in December. I mean, this is before the YouTube channel. This is just me talking in random Telegram groups. But I pivoted and said, guys, we're in a topping process. Now, when we came down here, this was, exactly what I was expecting to happen, but I did not expect this bounce. I didn't expect this wick to get bought up so quickly and for us to end up here again. So are we having a double top? I don't know. But seeing this sell signal certainly worries me for the bulls that, February could still end up being a red month. I know right now it's beaming green and we're coming up on Valentine's Day week, and I thought for sure it would be a bloody Valentine's Day. But, I still come back to this and kind of wonder, what's that all about? Is it a false signal? It could be. So I think, that's another thing to kind of pay attention to. The buy volume hasn't been like super impressive either compared to the sell wick that we had here. So that's another thing to pay attention to. One of my indicators is calling this a double top already and listing a target down here of $28,000. I don't know about that. I mean, anything could happen. The market does tend to move aggressively in one direction or the other. I don't know. That's these targets sometimes don't get filled. I'm kind of curious to see what this says on a higher time frame. Let's move up to like a 5 day and see if this is still calling it a double top. On the 5 day, it doesn't have enough data to call it anything, but on the 3 day, calling it a double top is interesting because that algorithm that predicts the potential path for an asset it usually doesn't print these patterns even on the 3 day. So calling that a double top is something we definitely should pay some attention to. Now, this is a new tool of mine that I just started using called linear regression. For those of you who are not aware of the differences, so logarithmic regression is based on logarithmic growth. Linear regression is based on assuming the charts grow in a linear way, so that they grow at like almost a constant rate of change, which we know that's not going to be reliable for long-term data, but it can be useful for short-term data that doesn't move too much. And my linear regression from at least here to here is calling this a very weak trend. Now I can modify the length of the channel. I'm going to do that and see what it says. So if I pull it back to September, this is a very strong trend. I mean, look at the slope of this line. This is insane. We are right at the median line of this linear regression trend. The mean line is at 48.7K, and that's pretty much where we were over here. So the top of this channel right now is at about 57K. So if this does break through, 60K could be in the cards. That's something to keep in mind. So this is a very strong trend overall, and it's just looking at its slope. It's very steep. So while this trend in here was not considered to be that strong, when we pulled it back all the way to September, we have some very, very strong growth in this leg of the bull market. This is quite possibly the most extensive moving average ribbon I've ever created. So we have some very key moving averages on here, and I want to zoom in and take a look at what's going on. So this is your 200 times 3. So what is that, 600 day. This is your 100 times 3, or 300 day. This is your 50 times 3, or 150 day. This is your 40 times 3, or 120 day. The yellow is the 60 day, and the pink is the 10 times 3, which is the 30 day. So you can see that there's a bit of a battle going on here with the 10 and the 20. All these moving averages are turned up just beautifully. I mean, you really can't get much more bullish than this, short of seeing the 10-week extended above the 20, which it currently is not. Sorry, the 10 over the 20. So we'll have to kind of watch this, but I can see why we got, called a very strong trend. I mean, look at this. You like to see this. You like to see the moving averages sorted out from least to greatest heading down, with your 200 at the bottom. I'm kind of curious what this looks like on a weekly time frame. Let's take a look at that. Let's pull that up and see. So, okay, on the weekly time frame, we're riding the 10-week. Wow. Struggling a little bit to hold it at times, but we're riding the 10-week. That's impressive. We had a wick down to the 20-week, almost to the 20-week. That 20-week is just shooting right up. The 40-week is still lagging behind at around 33,000. The 50-week is around 31, call it 32. And so those moving averages are sorted out nicely. And then we have our 100-week still down here at around 28.3, and we have the 200-week around 31. So these have not sorted out yet. Not sure if they will super quickly. Let's throw the Gaussian in and also see what maybe that looks like. I mean, man, if you're just looking at the weekly, this looks really freaking good. So the Gaussian is reflecting the moving averages. It's narrow. It's been narrowing. It's concave up on the weekly time frame. And so, I was seeing some weakness creeping in with the Gaussian ribbon, which is a different indicator. Let me show you again. So with the Gaussian ribbon, you can see that we squeezed here back in September, October, and then we opened up again. The mouth opened, and we're pretty wide. So generally speaking, when this happens, you're looking at coming down again at some point into the ribbon. And the bottom of this ribbon is right around 30K. So this could be a dramatic drop that's coming. It could surprise a lot of people. I'm not saying it has to go all the way to the bottom of the ribbon, but you can see we usually slice right through a ribbon. And let's go back on the weekly, and you can see these slices through ribbons can be pretty dramatic. That's a bull market, of course. That's 2021 bull market. But let's look at some other accumulation phase situations. Yeah, I mean, this is September of 2020, October, or what is this? No, this is 2019. Heading into late 2019, we were way above the ribbon, and then we just slashed right through it when it started to narrow. And Let's go back here in 2018. That was a bear market. Sorry, my computer is getting a little overburdened with all these indicators. Take a journey through the Gaussian ribbon. This is probably an indicator you're not super familiar with. It's actually quite useful. You see just the opposite happening with a red ribbon. Where are we right now? Somehow skipped all of 2016, didn't I? Yeah, you see in the 2016 cycle, once we got going out of the 2015 bear, that Gaussian ribbon just never went red. Just it would narrow sometimes. But by this time, I mean, we were already getting pretty parabolic, so this was like, getting into like late 2016, early 2017. Is this happening again? Could this be happening again? Let's pull up the Gaussian channel and compare. Are we maybe gonna squeeze and then blast off? If we see that happen, folks, our cycle is probably ending early. Okay, just letting you know that. As I pointed out, there's a lot of similarities that the 2015 through 2017 cycle shares with this one. This Gaussian channel behavior is very similar to what we're going through right now. It's wider. The reason it's wider is because, there was more volatility back then, because we're only sloshing around hundreds of dollars. We're sloshing around tens of thousands of dollars now. So that's why you don't see that volatility. But take a snapshot of that in your mind for a minute. Look at how we held the 40 week beautifully on this wick. Let's see what things look like now. And kind of project from here. So doesn't that look similar? It does to me. So it's perfectly possible that we're already in mania and we don't even know it. Look how far the 40 week is so far away at 33K. I would like to see us test that 40 week. Folks, we could already be in mania. It is possible that we're entering into mania. Seeing this narrow like this, so even if we do get that pullback, I just don't think it's going to last very long. And I think after that pullback, off to the races again. Okay, I can't see this going on forever. This wick here was only down to the 20, not even down to the 20 week, maybe like the 15 week or something. So at some point we're going to have to test this 40 week, which is trending up. I can't tell you when that's going to happen. It could be at 35K by the time that happens. But seeing the Gaussian ribbon so wide, seeing the potential of a double top, the resistance at the 618 fib on the logarithmic and on the linear fibs is really making me think, and also a weak trend like this. While this trend is strong, I just feel like we need a little bit of a breather, and more so than tagging the 20 week, maybe we need to come down to the 40, maybe. Just because I'm saying we need to do that, folks, doesn't mean it's going to happen. Hey, I haven't really taken a look under the hood. I've only been looking at the chart indicators, and it's been like 23 minutes, and I thank you for still sticking with me here, but I want to give Bitcoin the most comprehensive, detailed checkup that we could possibly give it. That way, I can state what my prediction is, but you can also form your own opinion and maybe get some action going in the comments or in a Telegram group. More about that at the end of the video. And we can kind of like, maybe figure this out together. Interesting. So when you just look at the chart, it's really hard to tell exactly, it's really hard to read where you're going to go. Folks, it looks like we're about to have bullish divergence on the MACD on the 3-day. So this could last a little while. It could. Now we can't predict exactly how strong that bullish divergence is going to be, but if this 3-day candle prints green, that's bullish divergence, and that means this uptrend has legs to it. The RSI, this is the Snabble RSI, which is an exponential version of the RSI. It is also in bullish divergence right now and had formed actually an inverse head and shoulders of its own. So I think we're taking a trip back to the top of this channel, and I think we're going to be going probably over 50K if that happens. So I'm just telling you what the indicators tell me. So these are definitely points for the bulls. I'm literally throwing everything I have at this thing. The bull bear power trend is very bullish. We're printing green volume candles. The Gaussian filter MACD, or the hyperspace rails as I like to call it, is extremely bullish. When you have a green line running parallel to a white line like this, and the green running ahead, you got your long signal back on, looks like February 3rd. Yeah, we're going to have some more upside. That seems to be the odds. Curious what this looks like on the weekly, which is a little bit lagging, right? So let's take a look on the weekly. Looking like we're forming a bullish cross here. Okay. Um, yeah, green candle. It looks like we're getting another leg up, another sustained leg up. That's what I think. Um, I'm flipping very bullish based on what I'm seeing under the hood. Hey, this is a tool known as the Lux Algo Liquidity Sentiment Indicator, and you can see that. Well, first of all, here's how you read it. So when you see these like orange bars, this indicates very high levels of trading activity or high levels of high liquidity. Um, these gray and light blue bars indicate low liquidity or decreasing liquidity. The red and green indicate the kind of sentiment that's present at these levels. So there's a lot of green sentiment present just below where we are now, and the sentiment switches to being more bearish, roughly from in a more sustainable way from about where we are. Well, actually, literally where we are now. You can see actually this wick sold off a little bit, especially at the 48 level. That's pretty high, and it starts to trail off as we get closer to 60K. So if we enter into this zone, there's not much liquidity here. And we know also, just kind of trailing back, that we're at sort of some historical resistance levels. There's sellers that are waiting to offload right in here. There's sellers waiting to offload here from the bear market back in 2022. There's still going to be people holding on. So I think our upside potential exists. I think we are likely to get it, more likely than not. But I would expect us to encounter some resistance in this region. And this is basically saying that we probably will get past the 618 fib, if you remember where that was located. If we just let's pull up our log lines. So you can see we have the 618 fib that we've just been pressing against. And I would expect that we are going to get above this. You knock on this enough times, we made a full trip around the world, we're probably going to blast through this. And I think we'll encounter some trouble from about, it looks like around 50,000 to, let's call it 55,000. There's very low liquidity in here, and if we go back, we have some people who own Bitcoin that are going to want to offload it over here. So that's our first obstacle to get past, and that's kind of, as far as logarithmic fibs are concerned, we're in no man's land here. But I imagine we'll get dumped out of here, and I don't honestly know if we'll hold the 618. We might come up here and then just drop down to the 618 again and hold it. I don't know. I can't think that far ahead, but what I can tell you is odds are we go up. Okay, this is a chart or an indicator known as the NW envelope. It's a logarithmic envelope that typically shows you on a logarithmic scale where turning points in price action are likely. And you can see that when it tags the green boundary, it usually moves up. When it tags the red, sometimes it gets outside of the red, and then it'll tag this median line, right? So this is just another tool to use, similar in some ways to very similar to the logarithmically weighted, or the weighted logarithmic Bollinger Bands. But you can see the red serves more often than not as a nice boundary and reversal. So when you hit the red, you usually have a reversal coming, although you can blast through it, as we did here. We were riding the median line for a while and then just blasted through it, sliced through it again. So could we do something like that where we blast through it up into the 50s and then kind of move sideways and come back down? That is certainly possible. Do note that the red and green colors are moving down. So this makes me believe that while we could sustain some upside momentum for a little while, we're probably going to see a reversal. And here's the weekly of that chart. And using that NW logarithmic indicator, you can see where the red lies. It's right in that Lux Algo zone that we showed you in the last chart before this, around the 50,000 to 54,000 region. So I'm kind of anticipating a move up to that level if we can make it that high. There's no guarantee that we do. As you can see, there are gaps in here sometimes. we did get rejected off of this line the last time we tried to get up to it. So can we get back up to it again? I don't know, but it seems like the odds are more in favor that we do than we don't. But then I would expect some resistance and a rejection. This is a tool that allows me to measure trends. And you can see that our trends have been increasing in slope from the time of January 2023. This trend line was broken. We bounced to another trend line, which we broke through, but then held this one. The support sort of bounced off of it, came back down, sliced through this trend line, and then we've been on this new trend line, which started off at a price of about 25,000, and then we sort of went underneath into the 26, 27, and just blasted off. And we've been, we almost came down to test this trend line recently. We haven't, broken through it or anything. So we're kind of in no man's land with this trend line. And this trend line extends, if we were to go all the way to April 2024, by then the bottom of the trend line would be around 46K. So do we take a leg lower now, or do we take a leg lower later? That remains unknown, but we are riding above it. And there's no clear signal on the 3-day as to what's going on. And I looked on lower and time frames, and I couldn't really find any clues in them. So this indicator doesn't really tell me a whole lot, except we have been riding above the trend line for a really long time. It seems like we're due for a break of trend at some point. This is the money flow oscillator and a trendoscope, and you can see that we had a double top that we put in November and December, and then we started trending down till January, and it looks like we had a head and shoulders here as well. This is the overbought region up here in green. Oversold would be here in red. We haven't been oversold since September and October. I mean, it's a really long time. So the question is that we should be asking ourselves on this trend line that I'm about to draw, well, we've definitely broken through it, is where do we go from here? So if we look at this trend line, are we going to maybe back test it and bounce again back to the oversold region? Are we going to put in a lower high and just slice right through it? Yeah, I mean, who knows? I think we could maybe look for clues on, different indicators to maybe tell us what is more likely to happen. But we're heading more towards overbought than we are towards oversold. We got like down this low, but then we bounced. And that does happen sometimes. You can see that this happened in February and March. We got down to an area that I would say is, fairly oversold, not quite in the oversold region, but heading in that direction. We bounced. So we can print these divergences and they can last for quite some time, but we can still maintain the overall structure of the trend. And this trend was down, this trend was up. And so the question is this another kind of protracted downtrend that we're in with money flow? Because that's usually what happens, You can get these reversals, but see, this trend was mainly down. This was the bear market. So this is why I said I think any bounce that we have here, I don't feel like it's going to be long-lived. I think we could make it to 50 to 53K and then call it a day. The TRIX, or triple exponential moving averages, is actually turned down here. Not really considered to be too bearish until you go underneath the zero line, which hasn't happened in quite some time. But you can see that outside of mania phases, they don't tend to spend a lot of time in these in this highly extended triple exponential moving average. You can see we started out in October concave up, then we started to go concave down, and now it looks like we're starting to inflect. And my guess is we get like a little bounce and then come down. That's going to be kind of my base case from what I'm seeing here. And so the bullishness I'm reading on these indicators is probably revealing this. We had an inflection here. We went from concave down to now concave up. So we're probably going to, do something kind of like this, maybe a little sharper. It's hard to say. I have to look at the ADX and DI to get an idea of the trend strength right now. So it's really useful to look at these charts on different time frames. This is the weekly time frame for Bitcoin. And you can see that the TRIX bottomed in October of 2022 and then just moved straight up all the way into July of 23, and then kind of had a little rollover into September and October, and then started trending back up. But now it looks like it's starting to crest again before maybe it moves lower. So if we look at the ADX and DI, I've drawn a trend line here to indicate how the green directional index looks like it's putting in a series of lower highs. And so when the green directional index is going towards the red directional index, that indicates bearish convergence. Like you can see that happen here and here in the early part of January, but then we kinked away. And that, when you have green directional index moving away from the red directional index, that is bullish divergence. Our trend strength right now is very strong at 63. It's actually the strongest it's been. So that's why this move feels so strong, because the trend strength is strong. This strong trend strength won't last forever, and it will start to roll over. And that's usually a sign that some kind of consolidation period is coming. I would expect the red and green to meet again. And this still makes me think February, the end of February and March are going to be bearish months. They're going to be down months. That's what I think. The average sentiment oscillator, or ASO, is also trending down on the weekly. You can see it peaked at 80, which is usually where it peaks. And unless you're in a mania phase, we generally don't see this kink back up again. You can see kind of like previous mania phases, like here's the 2018 bear market, and then here's 2019. We had that first crazy bounce out of that bear market when we got all the way up to 80, and then we had to experience a little bit of bearishness and consolidation before we had our bull move. This is our bull market, our true bull market with mania. If you look at the 2016 2017 cycle, we also had to alternate between green being on top and have little moments where the red was on top, even if it was just for a short while, which is like a month. I think something like this could be very reasonable, that we come into like a little period of weakness that lasts maybe a month at most, month and a half. I can't give you an exact time frame, but that's what I kind of think. And then look at this. This was your mania phase. So I'm thinking, yes, we could kink back up here again. It's possible, and then come down. Now, what I would be on the lookout for is if this just starts to just stay crazy up here, but I don't see how that's going to happen. I don't see how we're going into mania, honestly, with the ADX starting to turn down. That's not mania. This is what happens during mania. You start going up, right? ADX is trending up. ADX trends up into mania. Now, you could have something like this happen, but this first peak was March 17, July 17, and January 18 was the last bit of peakiness on the ADX and DI. But you can see in terms of, you generally don't see, on the average sentiment oscillator, you generally don't see this kind of structure play out unless you're in mania. So I don't think we're in mania unless the cycle peak was 48K, which would be so disappointing. I don't see how this could possibly be mania. But this is a pretty high wave, honestly, but we had a wave about this high back in 2020, or I'm sorry, August of 2019, we had a wave pretty high. Let's see what 2016 looked like. 2016, we had, one strong wave into another. Then we had a trough in October, and then boom, we started, crazy mania. So I'd like to see us form another trough with the ADX. I'd like to see the trend strength die out, heading in, or not die out all the way necessarily, but just come down at least a little bit, so we can kind of reset our indicators and really prepare for a nice blast off. Okay, this is the 3D wave trend oscillator with a kernel moving average. Looks like a snake. This is, I also refer to it as the Northern Lights. You can see that when the colors up here get really bright red, that means that you are very oversold. When the colors are very bright green, that means you are very overbought. And so right in December, this was reading very overbought. And you can see the kernel moving average is shot straight up from October 16th just straight to mid-January. And then this turned red. We actually had one of the moving averages move down and reverse. This one here is also looking like it wants to turn around, the longer term moving average. So it's really hard to imagine that we're heading into another major period of overbought after we just spent so much time being overbought. I mean, unless we're in mania, right? So if we see something like what happened in 2021, you just get increasingly overbought. I mean, this was insanely overbought because you were, nearing the peak of that cycle. If we go back to 2019, this looks more similar to kind of like what we're doing now in some ways. We kind of turned over and crisscrossed before heading down. So that's something to keep in mind. Although I don't think this cycle looks like 2019 at all. This was 2016, and you can see what happened here. It was kind of interesting. This was already in March, where this kind of turned down, and then we shot up another leg, and the cycle really didn't have much gas left in the tank by that time. So we find ourselves kind of at a similar level today, I would say, to where we were in 2019. We're actually lower than we were in 2019. It'd be healthy to see this come down a little bit and kill off some of this bullish momentum for a little while. And that's my base case. I really think that's what's going to happen. The beam on the weekly still shows that Bitcoin is relatively undervalued. So I don't see this as like a mania thing. I think, it just doesn't feel that way. So maybe what happens in the coming week or two is we test this green line right here and then start to come back down and form a base that's higher. You can see in past bull markets, that's essentially the process of what we did. So if we go back to 2016, you kind of form these little mountains and they get bigger and bigger, and then you kind of blow off to the top. Now, 2017 top was insanely, this was like a perfect bull market. I mean, you can't even make things like this up. On the 2021 bull market, we barely peaked our head above this orange band. And if we look back on the past, you can see that, you can see the diminishing returns playing out over time. So I may have to actually lower this orange bar. I think I probably will. Maybe we don't make it above this gray one, this time. Maybe the cycle ends somewhere in here. That would not surprise me with these diminishing returns. So maybe the gray bar is more of a sell zone than the orange bar. So I have to kind of think that through and decide how I want to make adjustments for Bitcoin, because I don't think it's going to be as strong this cycle as it was last cycle because of diminishing returns. The dollar has been one of the hardest charts to read for me. I know I did a video on it recently, and it just hasn't moved much. It did move above the Gaussian channel median line, and I am taking notice of that. It's also above its 40-week and its 10-week SMAs, so that's actually kind of bullish for the dollar. Even though it is in this holding pattern, it looks like it's ready to just put in either a lower high or a higher high. I don't know. That Gaussian channel is pretty flat. So let's put on some logarithmic Bollinger Bands if I can find them on here. Hold on one moment. Yeah, folks, I think the dollar has room to run. The top of the Bollinger Band is at 106. So this is what I was saying. I think while Bitcoin could move a little bit higher, and we know that Bitcoin's movement with the dollar is not negatively correlated until the dollar tends to get more volatile, but I think that time may be coming. So, enjoy this strength while it lasts, but I have to just think that it's not going to last too much longer. Let's take a look at ETH Bitcoin briefly. ETH Bitcoin looks bearish. I mean, it just does. It kind of fake out to the 40-week, and which happened to also coincide with the bottom of the red Gaussian and the top of the logarithmic Bollinger Band. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to see major strength out of ETH Bitcoin anytime really soon. It looks like pretty weak to me. ETH season, it's going to be here, folks. It's going to be here, but we got to be patient. Like I said, Bitcoin dominance's bull market looks like it's probably coming to an end fairly soon, and we might, see some weakness coming from Bitcoin dominance, maybe, sometime around halving would be my guess. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think. So there you have it. Thank you for sticking with me in this really long crypto simulation video on Bitcoin. We did the deepest dive I could possibly do into it. and I hope that you learned a lot and this has helped you kind of see where you think Bitcoin is likely to go and prepare for it. Here's my base case. Maybe I can like draw it out with a path. So let's pull up the path tool, and so here's what I think. We're going up, and I can't tell you exactly how up we're going. We're going to put in a logarithmic double top, and then I think from there we're going to head down and probably encounter some resistance in here. Oh, that takes me into March. Okay, it's further than I want this to go. Yeah, I don't know. I think sometime around March-ish. I don't even know if this move is going to last as long as I have it lasting. So let's tweak it a little bit. Maybe like February, end of February, we start to head down, and somewhere around the 42 level. I guess I have to draw a new path. TradingView gets annoying with me sometimes. Maybe we bounce up a little bit, just ever so slightly, and then head down to wherever the 20-week is. I can't say how far down we're going to go if we go down. I don't think we're going to necessarily have a huge drop like that, but let's just say like around here. I'm still thinking like 35 to 38K, somewhere in there is in play. Don't take this to the bank, folks. Don't scold me if this goes wrong. Any price predictions that I make should be for entertainment purposes only. And what I'll generally say is I have to make a prediction, right? My prediction is Bitcoin goes up, probably to around 50K-ish, 53K, 50K, somewhere in there, putting in a slightly higher high at best. And then Bitcoin comes down in a more sustained way. And I think it will come down all the way potentially into the beginning of April or the end of March at the absolute latest. Like, I don't even know how long that's necessarily going to last, but something like that. Okay, I don't have my log lines, I don't have my fibs, so I mean I could put them on. I just have so many freaking indicators that's hard to find. Actually, I think I turned it off on here. Give me a second. Well, it doesn't look like I did that bad of a job with my drawing. This seems pretty reasonable to me, like without seeing the Bollinger Band and without seeing the log lines, and I didn't have them memorized. I think this is a pretty reasonable path, because if you extend the 0.5 fib out, yeah, like around 36K. So that's probably where I think we're most likely heading into the end of February and into the middle of March. And then hopefully we can give the Bollinger Bands a chance to reset. We can give the indicators a chance to reset. And then we can head into the halving, which is typically very bullish. So I would like to see us have our correction in late February, heading into March, and maybe even into early April, if it lasts that long, which is doubtful, and then turn back up again and have some real bullishness heading into the halving. So I could be wrong. This would be invalidated if we start to just shoot straight up, but that's what I think. Well, thanks for joining me in the crypto simulation today. Please remember to join my Telegram channel to discuss ideas like this. Be notified of alerts. I'm in there every day posting stuff, and there's a good group of people in there, some of whom you might recognize. And make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this video to everybody you know, and be sure to also subscribe to my Twitter. I'll put links in the description to everything, so it's easy for you to find. You can just click on the Telegram link in there. It'll take you right there. And that's about it. So thanks for, being so patient. We're almost at an hour of recording time. My longest video ever on Bitcoin, of all things, right? Of course, Bitcoin is the king of all cryptocurrency, so it deserves the very best attention. All right, take care. Bye.